Who Loves the Shabbat? A Dvar Torah for Parashat Vaetachanan. In J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings series, there's a chapter where two of the main characters temporarily join forces with one of their enemies. At some point, however, the common goal dissipates and the enemy flees, only to attack the heroes unexpectedly later on in the story. The point I'm trying to make in my roundabout way is that the reason we act often dictates the action. Even if sometimes two reasons coincide, often they will not reach the same destination. That's why when given a reason for a mitzvah, it should be examined, which brings us to this week's parashah. When studying the Psukim in Parashat Vaetachanan concerning Shabbat observance, something in the commandment doesn't fit. This is not the first time we encounter this mitzvah in the Ten Commandment format, and when we last saw these words in Parashat Yitro, the reason mentioned for observing Shabbat was, "For in 6 days God made the heavens and the earth, and rested on the seventh day. Therefore God blessed the day of Shabbat and sanctified it." Shabbat observance has a historical, religious, traditional reason. Keep Shabbat so you'll remember that there is a creator for the world. Shabbat in Sefer Dvarim is kept for a completely different reason, so that your servant and maid may rest like you, and you shall remember that you were a slave in Egypt, and Hashem brought you out. That is why Hashem, your God, commands you to keep the Shabbat day. According to these Psukim, the Shabbat is kept for social reasons. Everyone gets to rest on Shabbat. Us, the converts, the slaves, and the animals. Remember that we were slaves, so remember the Shabbat. So why do we keep the Shabbat? Is it for religious or social reasons? To answer this question, I'd like to draw attention to several words in Parashat Vaetachanan. Unlike the Ten Commandments in Parashat Yitro, nor most other commandments in Parashat Vaetachanan, except for honoring one's parents, Shabbat comes with a preface. Observe the Shabbat day to keep it holy as Hashem your God commands. The question is, when were the people of Israel commanded to observe the Shabbat? The simple answer could have been the first time the Ten Commandments were mentioned. The problem is, if this is true, why weren't these words added at the beginning of the list of commandments, all of them, or alternatively, before every single commandment? Rashi explains that Shabbat was singled out because the commandment to observe it was given in Mara. Rashbam, on the other hand, chooses to keep the simple yet difficult interpretation of Ka'asher tzivcha in the first commandments. He continues to explain why these words were added only for the Shabbat and Kibud Orim, but I believe that another explanation can be inserted into his understanding. As we mentioned, the reason to keep the Shabbat according to Parashat Yitro is to remember the creation, a memory that will dictate a certain behavior. In practice, just as God stopped creating, so must we stop creating. The behavior learned by the socialist Shabbos has nothing to do with creation. Instead, it calls for rest. Keeping only a social Shabbat could leave us with an assortment of Shabbatot. Would you like to keep Shabbat on Tuesday? Go for it. Once a fortnight? No problem. How about spending Shabbat in prayer and study? Have fun. Going to the beach? Sure. That's why the Torah opens with the reference to Parashat Yitro. Keep the social Shabbat, not instead of remembering the creation, but in addition. Only after the traditional foundation is set can the social one be added. Did you enjoy this video? If so, subscribe, pass it on to a friend, maybe they'll enjoy it as well. I am Dovi Holtz, one who loves Tanakh.